Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Yarhimilo. I'm the Dean of Columbia School of International Public Affairs and the Adlai E. Stevenson Professor of International Affairs. It's a pleasure to welcome you and to co-host today's conversation with our colleagues at the Columbia Journalism School. I want to extend my thanks to Dean Jelani Cobb for his partnership in bringing this convening together, and to the President's Office for their support. It's really great to see so many of you here. Today's conversation grows directly out of the work at Columbia through the Institute of Global Politics, Technology, and Democracy initiative. This initiative is co-led by Maria Ressa and Camille Francois. And from the outset, we recognize that global politics today cannot be understood without grappling with our information systems. Maria and Camille have been leading this work rigorously, and I have to say, with real impact. Before I turn the floor over to Maria, let me briefly highlight the initiative's work. It is about advancing open source AI in the public interest, pioneering new models for online safety, and producing original research on harms ranging from deepfakes to disinformation to AI-generated content. The initiative has developed data sets enabling researchers worldwide to study threats such as the Iranian information operations targeting elections. It has also incubated a nonprofit, which is really remarkable, called Roost, building open source safety tools to protect children online in partnership with major technology platforms. And this is proof that we do not have to wait for regulations to begin making the internet safer. The work continues to grow, and it's really been impressive to see. Maria has recently named co-chair of the United Nations Independent International Scientific Panel on AI. It's a group of 40 experts from 37 countries now helping to shape the foundations of global AI governance. The panel held its first meeting last month and will deliver its inaugural report this summer. So as you can see, the global scientific infrastructure for AI governance is taking shape, and Columbia faculty are helping to lead it. Congratulations, Maria, for this. So when we ask whether we are witnessing the collapse of our information environment, we're not asking this in the abstract. We are asking as scholars and practitioners who have spent years diagnosing the problem, building responses, and shaping the governance frameworks that may help shape it. So today, our panel will help with taking up the questions at the heart of this challenge. And we are really fortunate to have an extraordinary group of people to help us think through those difficult questions. I'm pleased to say we have with us Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, who will bring her deep experiences. Yes, that's the one and only, really. Her deep experience at the intersection of democracy and global politics, including her ongoing work on children's online safety and the targeted harassment of women in public life. Maria Ressa, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, co-founder and CEO of Rappler, co-chair of the UN Scientific Panel on AI, and professor of professional practice here at CIPA. She will present original research from the NERV. She will explain what it is, on how information ecosystems break down, and what the implications are for journalism and democratic governance in the age of AI. Camille Francois will offer a perspective on the technological dimensions of the challenge and what it means to build open source safety infrastructure for the AI era. We're so lucky to have her as a professor at CIPA. Emily Bell from the journalism school will be, yes, will speak to the evolving role of journalism in sustaining a resilient information ecosystem. And then we have here with us Amandeep Singh Gill, the UN Undersecretary General for Digital, here you go, and Emerging Technologies, who will bring a global perspective on AI governance and the urgent need for international cooperation. Thank you so much for being with us today. And my sincere thanks to CNN Sarah Sidner for moderating today's discussion. Sarah, thank you so much for doing this. It is now my great honor to invite Maria Ressa to the stage. Please joining in welcoming her.
Let me grab this. Oh, yay, it works. So I have 10 minutes and I will stick to it because I will lay out the problems for you, but the panel hopefully will come up with the solution so you won't leave depressed for lunch, right? Let's go here. This is something that I think you need to see because what we saw in the first 100 days, right, in the time of Duterte in the Philippines, we watched a lot of this stuff. I would say it was in its infancy. Now you're dealing with it. It's not the teenage years. It's a little bit older, and it's about to get worse. So the narrative breakdown, narrative warfare, and the breakdown of reality. How does this all fit in? All of this stuff comes from a Rappler news group of like 100 people. And when you come under attack, you figure out what's going on and you don't have to ask the tech platforms for data because it's coming at you. I was getting an average of 90 hate messages per hour. All of that, you have to go in and look at this book because How to Stand Up to a Dictator became, Americans I think were looking for what, how did we get to this point? It's data driven, which is exactly what you're getting in this report. Now I can tell you about this company called Nerve. This process was something that we did for Rappler to survive the attacks of the Duterte years, right? At that point, I called it information operations. Then it became information warfare. Now you're dealing with narrative warfare. But this is what we did. We essentially took all of the stories that you're getting, stories that are coming at you. We did natural language processing on it, and then we figured out what are the networks that are spreading that. And then when the Duterte administration tried to shut us down in 2018, we dropped 49% of our advertising revenue. You will hear from Emily about how journalism will survive this. We spun off a company called Nerve. It stayed under the radar during the Duterte years. He's gone, and my 11 criminal cases are down to 1, right? And now we have Nerve, right? And this is what Nerve has done under the radar. It has literally given us an idea of how this has spread around the world, right? How you have been insidiously manipulated by big tech. You've heard my 3 sentences over and over because I started saying it in 2016, without facts, because facts don't spread as fast as the lies, right? As 2018, lies spread at least 6 times faster. That's an MIT study. So without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without this, we have no shared reality. You can't have journalism. You can't have democracy. We're there, right? We're at that moment. So I just want I want to remind you how information operations really work, because most people think, it's only a post, it doesn't have any impact on me. This is the way it really works. There are 2 phases. There's the seeding phase, and think about what's being seeded, right? The first time we saw this was in Ukraine, seeding of the meta-narrative that was used to annex Crimea. And then the opportunistic amplification, you pound it over and over and over until it becomes a fact. And these, because I only have 10 minutes, I'm going to go through them very fast. You're going to have to go on both X and on Blue Sky. I will tweet where the report is, and you can see it. This is how a lie becomes normalized and becomes a fact. Right? This is our public information ecosystem. My response to that question is, absolutely it's about to collapse, right? And you have been insidiously manipulated. That is data-driven. Let me talk about then, let's go to today. I want to show you how something that had been simmering just under the surface was, in less than a year, it's a little less than a year, went from being a meme to becoming state policy. It was the national security strategy. And then January 6th, becoming kinetic reality, right? So you can see as early as 2017, it was just thrown into the information ecosystem, but it became a meme here. That was when the narrative was seeded. And then, you guys remember how the legal scaffolding was built, right? We tend not to pull the disparate strands together. So I'm pulling everything up. Remember, the cartels in Venezuela were designated foreign terrorist organizations. Narco-terrorism, because of the brutal drug war in the Philippines. I was watching this very closely in the Philippines. And then by late 2025, institutional authorization was bypassed, right? We know what happened here. Well, this was December. Fentanyl declared a weapon of mass destruction. Fentanyl, which my president said in a podium that he took all the time, institutional authorization bypassed here. December, the national security strategy came out, so the meme became a policy here, and then on January 3rd, it became kinetic reality. Venezuela, Greenland, Minneapolis. And you'll hear from Sarah, who was the lead in Minneapolis, and you can see how we deal with this, right? The first reporter to call a lie a lie. This is what it used to be. And I want you, again, we're pulling up. This is the way democracy used to work, right? We had institutional gatekeepers. They were here. Media, Congress, courts, the experts. This is before we became the cult of the amateur, right? And that the debate happened in the public sphere, and that gave policies legitimacy. This is the world we live in today, right? The gatekeepers are gone because the public information sphere is ruled by tech platforms that aren't transparent, that are insidiously manipulating us for profit. So all of this is pushed out. This happened in the Philippines. It certainly happened in America now. Although you can't rule them out completely, thank God. Right? You have to figure this out, but this is where it's being fought. And who does have the time to fight every single battle online? Platforms and influencers rewards emotion, monetizes outrage, it mobilizes the base. And these are the three things. If you dive into the report, you'll see 4 main findings, but it's vindication and allegiance. That's the main part. Duterte did the same thing, except Duterte killed, depending on which you're looking at, tens of thousands of people in a brutal drug war, right? YouTube was used for myth making. So we looked at the 4 platforms, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and X. And this always came out. And you'll hear from Secretary Clinton on some of these things, right? Because she was one of the main targets of this deconstruction model. And legitimacy, has anyone had a policy debate online recently? Oh my God, I have 2 minutes left. Okay, wait. All right, let me just do this quickly. This is where I'm going to bring you. So now you really are going to have to read the report. It's long, but it will be simple. 143 executive orders in 100 days. Right? 143 executive orders. And that became the content trigger that was amplified in a decentralized network of influencers and partisan outlets, reframing the events for the politically aligned communities. And then it's reinforced by the platform algorithms. Camille Francois will tell you what's happened with AI slop in our panel. And that just kept going. This is why it happens. Because not only is it the politics of it, you have a technological architecture that are built to reward it, and then an economic model, the creator economy. Please don't call a journalist an influencer. No offense, influencers. But I'm out of time. This slide is incredibly important because this is what I lived through in the Duterte years. Narrative warfare. Content creators are used here. They were paid in my country. We were able to show that not only were they paid, how much they were paid from the national budget. So narrative warfare, in America today, it's significantly worse than the Philippines. It's literally this first phase of the funnel. If you cannot tell fact from fiction, you can't move, right? And that's been part of our problem. But here's the other part, the second phase. If you can't tell fact from fiction, you cannot do the checks and balances. In my country, it took 6 years for Duterte to break down our institutions to become the most powerful leader we had ever had. I think in America, 100 days. Because not only was there a real dismantling, right? Like USAID is dismantled and the courts will follow later, but the checks and balances are gone. And why do you want to break down the checks and balances? Because here, follow the money. This is what journalists are doing now. We should be doing it more. Strategic corruption and kleptocracy, they don't just stay in their own country. The alliances are shifting. It's part of the reason the alliances in the UN are doing what they are. I'm going to finish it. How do you rebuild trust? I'm pulling this from a Rappler. There are 3 pillars that we use in Rappler. It's technology, journalism, and communities. You are a Columbia community. It's incredibly important to us that our communities stay together. What the communities in Minneapolis, in LA, in Chicago, the way they responded is also important, and they responded because they had facts. In 2022, we had this, and this is a simple upswing, right, which is a 10-point action plan. We did it for the EU at the time when the Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act were being debated. 300 Nobel laureates, civil society groups signed this. 10 points, but only 3 major points. The first, you never asked to be cloned online, so please stop surveillance capitalism. Stop surveillance for profit. Stop insidious manipulation of us. Number 2, stop coded bias. Because if you are a woman, LGBTQ+, if you are marginalized in any way in the physical world, you're further marginalized online. And then the last one, stated from the journalism school, journalism is an antidote to tyranny. The World Today, March report from VDEM just said that 74% of the world today is under authoritarian rule, 74%. We are electing illiberal leaders democratically, and part of that is because of the information you have. My last slide, you heard this from Karen earlier. One of the things I love about Columbia, and the journalism school is doing the same thing, we're not only studying it with the rigor of academics, we are working in it. We are trying to change it. We are looking for solutions, and that's what I hope you'll hear from this incredible panel afterwards. I will tweet X, I will blue sky the report itself so you can see it. Thank you. Let me pull up. So I feel like this is like my life in front of me here. Let me give it to Sarah.
Can we just have one more round of applause for this incredible human being right here? This is sort of a full circle moment because Maria worked for CNN and we miss her dearly, but obviously she has an incredible life that she has created and is helping all of us with what she does now. All right, now to the conversation. Now I know she started by saying that we are going to get to solutions. However, as a journalist, I got to delve into the problem a little bit more. So I want to start with you, Secretary Clinton. You have been the subject of unrelenting attacks online. Yes, in the media, but particularly online. People have come after you for things you have said, the way you look, the way you mother, the way you politic. I mean, everything under the sun. They've even condemned your soul. online. I mean, you've seen it all, and I know you get threats. So I'm curious as to what is it like for you to log on, because you use social media, we all do, right? What's it like for you to log on, and what is the most worrying thing that you're seeing as you are the subject of all of this, but it happens to a lot of people?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here at the journalism school with this joint program, and I thank all of you for coming, because I don't think there's a more important issue than we are facing than what's going on in the narrative warfare that Maria explained to us. And let me just briefly say, as she pointed out, we can really trace a lot of the most sophisticated narrative warfare from the invasion of Crimea in 2014 to the Brexit campaign, to my presidential campaign, and then we were off to the races. And so I think having that historical perspective to see how what succeeded in those efforts has only become much more amplified and more determinative of what we are all hearing and what we are being told to believe, and has made the job of journalism and community and political leadership all the more difficult. You know, as someone who has been sort of in the eye of this for now more than 10 years, it doesn't make me feel anything anymore about myself, because I have moved from a state of disbelief about the extraordinary impact of persistent lying that has no accountability, that is done for profit, done for political advantage, done for financial advantage, done for ideological and religious reasons, but all of it has the same impact. It puts each of us individually who is targeted, and you might be targeted as a high school student by a bully in your high school, or you might be targeted by Vladimir Putin or the TikTok algorithm, but you are still being targeted, and you are being, in effect, dragged into the, public arena and being threatened and being lied about. And it is very difficult, if not impossible, to do anything other than to try to find both a platform to try to put your own truth out, to try to put facts out, which is, let's be honest, a very difficult hill to climb. But you can't take it personally, even though it is aimed at destroying you personally and undermining whatever role you're playing, because you've become a target, because for whatever reason you have crossed somebody, you have threatened somebody, you are now in the target of their narrative warfare efforts. So, Sarah, really, I think it's important for us to look at the patterns here, which is why what Maria and Camille are doing is so critically important. And please get the report. There's 2 reports, actually. Get them, study them, understand what we are up against, because, it is a challenge if you have your own platform, as I do, to fight to a draw, because I bet every one of you believes some lie about me that has been told repetitively. That's just a fact. And so we try to fight to a draw so that maybe enough people will also believe some truth and will live in the fact-based reality. But that's where journalism comes in. And it is very difficult to do the job you are doing now, because you are up against this very well-funded, very clever and sophisticated operation that goes 24/7 to make it difficult for you to break through with the truth. And I want to commend Sarah, because she was the first journalist who said from Minneapolis that what we were hearing from our government was a lie. And yes, she deserves a big round of applause. Having a journalist use that 3-letter word is really hard. And so the fact that she did it and took the blowback for it is something we need more of, and we need to lift her up, but she needs a lot more company to do more of what she was brave enough to do.
Thank you. And I do have company. There are a lot of journalists out there that did such excellent work across that time. And by the way, it is not over in Minneapolis the way that people may think it is. I do want to do a quick poll, because again, it's what we do. Just to raise your hands, and I apologize, Secretary Clinton, but raise your hands if you've seen the video of Secretary Clinton in a tracksuit with kind of she looks like a rapper, in the middle of the Oval Office, dancing to a rap song and mouthing it. Anybody? Yeah, do it. Don't be I'm raising mine. Okay, so probably 6 people, about a half dozen people. Camille, is this AI slop? What is this? Because have you seen it, Secretary? Have you seen this video of you?
I've seen so many. I'll have to go back and look at my catalog.
Now, look, it's fun. It seems innocuous. It seems like funny, and people will share it because it's the secretary dancing in the Oval Office, rapping a song. But how is this being used? Is this what you consider AI slop?
When you pointed at me, I thought you were going to say, "Did you make this?" It's just, I did
Did
not,
you?
for the record. That's a good question. And we looked into what on earth do we even mean by AI slop. It was Merriam-Webster's word of the year in 2025, last year. And if you look at sort of the Google trends on AI slop, you can see that it exploded. Everybody's Googling slop, 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 slop. But when you look at questions people asked, the first question is, what is AI slop? So there's sort of like definitely issue around this. So what we did at Columbia is we gathered scholars from information, on the information environment, platforms, creators, people who make AI slop. I haven't yet met the person who did this specific piece, people who consume AI slop, and we tried to understand, what are we talking about? What are the harms? What are our levers to tackle this? And frankly, back to Secretary Clinton's initial point, like, what is new about AI slop? So taking a step back, by slop we mean content that's produced at an enormous scale with AI, that's optimized for social media, and that's generally low quality. So think like an enormous amount of memes. And whenever we think about one piece of slop, really the thing you're seeing is a very, very, very small piece of what's actually been produced, right? Like the enormous amount of slop that's produced, you don't really get to see, right? So people are sort of constantly testing the algorithms. And some of that is what Maria was saying. It's like, oh, it's memes, right? It's new memes. But the industrialization of it, the fact that now you can do it so fast and at scale, changes some of the dynamics in the information environment in ways that I think are meaningfully new. Here, investigative reporters have played an extraordinarily important role in helping us understand where those pieces of content actually come from. So I want to recognize, for instance, the great work done by 404 Media, which is an investigative outlet. They have tracked down the fact that a lot of these content actually is not produced for deception. It's produced for monetization. And so they track down the slop entrepreneurs, who are people like you and I don't know if you also spend a lot of time on your computer, people who spend a lot of time on their computer, who just sort of like do this once for fun and then sort of become absorbed in the slop economy. And that's what's new. Because when I started working on information operation in 2014 onwards, of course you had the troll farms and you had organized efforts that were producing these types of information and information operations, but you didn't have sort of a mad machine that recruited everybody who touched this into the production of it, which is what you have right now. So concretely, when you look at AI slop, for every slop video that you see, there's also a whole universe of content that teaches everybody how to do AI slop. And that tells you like, hey, do you want to buy a new car? You can definitely do this in less than a week if you start producing AI slop. Here's your how-to tutorial. And because clicks are more expensive in the US, you also have a whole ecosystem of videos that teach you, hey, here's what you can slop about today. Here's what's in the news. Here's what you may want to consider doing mass AI slop on because American people click on this in the news. And people get recruited into this mad slop machine, not because they want to deceive you, but because, again, it seems fun and they get monetary rewards, notably out of platform monetization incentives. that leads to what I think Maria calls the collapse of the information environment, because it radically accelerates the degradation of the information environment, not only because you're flooded with slop, but you create all this slop out there, becomes viral on social media. The algorithms understand that slop is viral on social media, further helps things become viral on social media. All this gets reabsorbed into the training data of AI models, who as a result produce more slop. So that sort of Ouroboros is really leading towards a place that I think we can say, or at least question, like, is this the collapse of our information environment? Maybe for good, I don't know.
You just freaked me out. Wow. I didn't realize that the algorithms and AI was training itself on AI slop. And then you've got this circular thing that happens to us all. Undersecretary Gill, I lived in India for many years as a reporter for CNN. And in 2018, I had left, but in 2018, something really disturbing happened. India is the largest user of WhatsApp. It's huge there, and as you might imagine, with a more than billion people country, that makes sense. But at some point, there were these horrible killings, dozens of people killed because of rumors on WhatsApp that got spread. And these are your neighbors, these are your friends, family members. People were getting killed, being accused of all manner of things. Here in the United States, when you look at some of the statistics and what we've seen in court recently, last month, a couple of companies are being looked at and said, hey, suicide rates are going way up. This is really harming the mental health, especially of young people. So we're seeing that in the States as well. What are you seeing as far as framework? Is there a framework that the UN has been working on across the world to try and deal with these specific issues, particularly for children, but really ultimately for all of us?
Right. Now, in 2018, India, of course, the biggest market for WhatsApp, and the company concerned had a single person looking at policy issues for 1.25 billion people. So I think which points you to how underinvested we are in tackling online harms, in ensuring the governance of some of these digital platforms, which inhabited by people more than any country, India or China, on this planet. So I think that's one area. But today I'm in my capacity as an international civil servant, so I'll speak about the UN. And my boss, the Secretary General, recently when he met with the International Independent Scientific Panel, he said, from the beginning of my mandate, I've cared about two things. One is truth, and the other is law. So I think we are losing the grip on these two. And you can look at it at the level of communities where there is a problem of trust. But you can also zoom out and go to the international level where, again, we have these narratives, we have this disregard for international law, what is there in the UN Charter or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So it's a universal problem, it's a multi-level problem. And I think what the UN's been trying to do is, first of all, just in terms of the narratives, we need to have a narrative of international cooperation, because you come up against these things. Regulation is bad. And busybodies in the United Nations or multilateral institutions shouldn't get into this. Leave this to us because we know best. So countering that narrative with a sober, pragmatic view of what the UN could bring to the table as a supplement, as a complement to what's needed at the national level and what is needed at the company and the platform level. So that's been my battle over the past 4 years. The Global Digital Compact, the International Independent Scientific Panel, a regular dialogue where these harms, these issues can be discussed. We can learn from each other's best practices, avoid the costly mistakes, and hopefully, and this is the most important thing, try and link these discussions, these assessments to the corpus of international law that we built up over the centuries. International humanitarian law, thou shalt not target civilians or schools, or and the corpus of law, the Convention on the Rights of Women. Over thousands of years, we built up some civilization level understanding and bound them through these normative frameworks. So we need to relate all of this to this. And if I could just end by something that I think if we spend less time online every day, spend more time with books, newspapers, the broadsheet ones, not the, and hang out with each other, especially people who have different views from us, who have different perspectives. I think that will go a long way in countering this kind of toxic impact these shifts are having on our minds.
It is a hard task because it's hard for all of us. I mean, I will be the first to admit, to get offline, to get my head. I just looked over, something pinged. I'm like, oh my God, what? Oh, okay, it's fine. Right, I mean, there's a dopamine that comes with it as well. All right, so Emily, let me ask you about journalism. And I mean, I'm sitting next to a woman who could have been jailed, I don't know how many times, right? I mean, court case after court case, people are, her own country coming after her. It is now one of the most dangerous professions in the world. Journalists killed for just telling the truth and trying to do their jobs. And on top of all of this, there is enormous amounts of misinformation that we also can get caught up in. Sometimes you don't know what's real. You literally have to dig down to figure out if one thing is true or not, because there's actual video that makes it look real. How in God's earth do we navigate all of this? And how in danger is journalism, do you think?
Great question. I teach something called information warfare reporting. I can see some of my students here, which addresses exactly this question. And we started it on the 20th of January, 21st of January, 2021, which was quite a big year for this kind of activity. So what's really struck me is how much, we used to think about this as information, dysfunction or information warfare, and it was separate from the political process. But as Maria's demonstrated, it's now the same thing. So the first thing you have to understand as reporters is that this isn't something that happens on the internet. This is politics, this is economics, this is international affairs, and there is a lens that you can bring to it as a reporter at every step of the way. But in order to do that, you have to stay separate from these systems. So it's kind of uncomfortable for me, a journalist, being on a panel with people who are in politics, not with Maria, who I've known for decades from when I was at The Guardian, she was at Rappler, because we should be actually in tension with government. We should be in tension with what is going on out there. We should be in tension with the military. We should be reporting on them. Reporting on them now does mean understanding that layer of what is going on whatever platform. So you can't really not be online. Great that Camille mentioned 404 Media. So I do think there's a hope. I open my social media very infrequently unless I'm playing New York Times games.
Keeping them alive.
Yeah, don't challenge me to cross-play, because then none of my work will get done this week. But I see. So The Guardian wasn't really known in the US 25 years ago. I spent 10 years there making it a bigger brand around the world. 404 Media didn't exist, couldn't have existed without the technology we have now. Places like Wired were very sort of niche, etc. So I think that what's happening is that we're understanding what the assignment is. But the assignment is way harder. 129 journalists killed last year, 2/3 of those killed by the Israeli military, let's not varnish it. Same the year before. We're also being asked to use the same kind of technologies. Palantir offers itself as a service in newsrooms. So does OpenAI, so does Anthropic, etc. This stuff is going to be baked into our system of doing this work. And that system is becoming centralized under a smaller and smaller number of companies. And if you look at CBS, the Washington Post, you look at all of these brands that are meant to be strong in opposition to all of these other systems, and they're not really in opposition. You could argue they were never really in opposition. You know, there's a whole kind of mainstream media narrative that says, well, these things are, but they kind of were. You know, there was an understanding that there was a tension there. So what we have to do, my worry is that this is not a collapse of the information ecosystem. This is a realization of a completely different information ecosystem that is not favorable to us. And by us, I mean people who, broadly speaking, want to see democracy thrive and don't want to see journalists killed and in prison, don't want to see schools with children in sort of targeted by autonomous weapons. That the information ecosystem exists, it's been made over the past 15 to 20 years, and we could have stopped it at various points and we didn't. So I think as journalists, we just have to learn this. We have to learn the history, we have to learn the technology, and we have to learn the current politics in the current moment. And we have to understand the politicians are now doing what we do in terms of communicating, but they're doing it better. You know, the White House is a media operation. We did some research on this at the Tower Centre. They link back to their own favoured media, which never used to happen in sort of previous iterations. They're creating a completely different system that shuts out any kind of dissent. You cannot criminalise or exclude dissent, whether it's on your own campus or whether it's in the wider media ecosystem, and expect journalism to thrive. So we kind of have to come at it from that. It's probably not what you want us to hear, Sarah, but this is the assignment. How we get there, I don't know. I mean, I think independence, smaller units is probably the way forward, and having some kind of policy dialogue that says next time when we have the opportunity, let's try and rebuild with a bit more cognizance that we cannot have 5 companies that can basically shut off or elevate whatever they want without any accountability.
Yeah, you're talking about what you're saying is it is incredibly difficult. I mean, we're at the point, that point of friction where it's only going to get harder. I think is sort of what you're saying.
But it's also exhilarating.
Yeah.
I think we
Try
know
to figure it out.
we know why we're here. I think everybody from the dean downwards, well, the dean's always known why they're here, but we know why we're here. I think that's key.
Maria, now I know you've been crazily taking notes over here. She's working on her third, 4th book? I don't know. You've lived this in the most visceral way. So how do you survive?
Okay, so first of all, don't get depressed. Everything that Emily said is absolutely true. And what we're seeing in terms of the threats to journalists, it's not just physical, it is legal, and it is also economic, right? Our businesses are getting strangled by the same companies, and all of that data point is there. If we move forward, the pattern and trend that we see is, and here's where it's going to get worse, for infotech meets biotech. And that, given the trends that we're seeing, means we lose not only agency, but we head towards a real dystopia of fascism. That's what you have to prevent. How did I survive? Well, so first of all, we survived because we're journalists. We kept doing the stories because the main thing right now, the long term is education, the medium term is regulation, the short term is just us. And civil society, this is why I did like the way finally Americans were coming together in communities, right? That was, but we survived because our journalism continued, and it is now part of the evidence that is being used in the charges of crimes against humanity against the man who tried to shut us down and jail me. Former President Duterte is now in prison at The Hague, facing these charges of crimes against humanity, and our journalism collectively, because we kept doing our jobs, helped to put him there. The other thing, so you gotta, this is why we gotta keep doing. But the business is going to try, they will come at you, and that is where we're most vulnerable, because the business model is literally, like the information ecosystem, collapsing. So that's also why we need to find, I mean, this is hopefully what we'll try to do. But it's also an incredible time for all the students who are here to think creatively, knowing the challenges of what can be done, because you can do it. You can do it, Sarah.
Can I? I don't know after this. We will see. Secretary, I want to talk to you a little about what this means, what the attacks mean, whether it's against journalists or in particular against women. We saw what happened to the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who is too afraid for her life to go back to her own country. There was a campaign, Microsoft, there was a report out showing that there was a Russian campaign that really, as she put it, went after democracy as a whole. But she is too afraid to return to her own country, where she was the leader of the country at one of the most pivotal times in the world, during COVID and after a terrible attack on her Muslim residents. What does this mean for female leadership, the way in which the internet interacts, particularly with female leaders?
Well, I think that Jacinda Ardern's example is a very high-profile example of what is happening literally around the world to women in public-facing positions, and not only in politics, but business or entertainment or the professions or journalism in particular. And I mean, the statistics are pretty daunting. The targeting of women specifically, the kinds of online threats, the doxing of women, has become a favorite technique of any group that is trying to silence women's voices, to prevent women leaders from attaining positions of greater responsibility. And there is so much evidence of technology facilitated gender-based violence because it is not only about specific attacks on specific women, it is the slop that characterizes all women as stepping out of bounds, not knowing our place, being pushy, being too outspoken, whatever the characterization and the attack might be. And it is also now part of, you know, what is generally called the manosphere, which probably should be the boyosphere, because it's now targeting, you know, young boys, teenagers, young men. And it's not just a targeted argument that, you know, Hillary Clinton or Jacinda Ardern or Nancy Pelosi or Kamala Harris, you know, is held to a double, triple, quadruple standard of difference. It is that they don't belong where they are trying to achieve a position or one that they hold, that they are without legitimacy. And so if you really dig into the messaging that young men and boys are receiving, it is almost shockingly misogynistic. It is about the role women should play and how to put them in their place. It is combined with, you know, searches for gym shoes, and all of a sudden then, you know, some kind of an attack on a specific woman or women in general. And it is having a chilling effect. I mean, it used to be when I would go to campuses or to groups to talk about women in politics or government, the primary questions would be about balancing family and work. It would be, how do I have a family? How do I have children? How do I make choices that are right for me and still, you know, be successful in my career? Now it is about security. Whether I'm meeting with local women elected in North East England, or women on this campus, or women anywhere, it is about, is it safe? And it is shocking when you are first dragged out online and virtually assaulted. And when you feel you have no recourse, where do you go to protect yourself? I had a woman counselor in Newcastle, England, say to me, you know, I signed up because I wanted to do something about our local environment. And all of a sudden, I've been attacked relentlessly, and I can't afford security. What do I do? So, you know, Maria has highlighted repeatedly the specific attacks on women journalists, which have just skyrocketed. And we have talked to platforms about this. We have, you know, tried to come up with ways of blocking or protecting women, but it is a tsunami of threats and hate directed at women. And some of it is automated, so it's not even personal. It's like a woman says something against leader X, fill in the name, and then the bots go to work, and they have similar themes that they use to degrade and undermine women. So this is a part of the larger story, but it's becoming more and more prevalent in the lives of any woman whose name gets into the public arena or is dragged unwillingly into the public arena, as we know with deep fakes and everything else that goes along with that.
And I'm pretty sure, I mean, just another show of hands, how many of the students out there have received some really hateful messages online? Just everyone, men and women. Okay, so a good number of you have received some hate online, and it's sometimes it's really scary. Sometimes it's stupid things. I get stuff all the time. It's like, you big fat so and so, you know, you need to go on a diet, or I hope you get raped and killed. Right? It goes the gamut of things that come, and those are things that happen regularly. And then you start seeing what you say, which is, it's automated. So you start seeing some of the same messaging over and over and over again, and you have no idea from who, but it clearly is from bots. Undersecretary Gill, I want to get a sense, because I know you're very passionate about children and the way in which they are trying to navigate this. Young minds, they're still cooking, if you will, they're still learning, and they're being deeply impacted by algorithms and by social media, and even by friends on social media. We've seen cases of extreme bullying. We've seen cases, we've seen so many different cases of just depression. And then again, as I mentioned, suicides. What on a world scale is being done? Is there a framework looking at this? And beyond that, it's been a long time. Social media has been around for a very long time. Where is the solution?
Right. At the global scale, you have the Child Rights Convention, which has been signed up by almost every country on earth. And that's been kind of reinterpreted for the digital age, because this is a pre-digital age legal framework. So, but that needs to be landed in a kind of refreshed understandings of national laws, as is happening, for example, in the UK, as is happening in some other places. There are some urgent issues, and some jurisdictions are throwing specific solutions at those issues, like, you know, banning social media below a certain age, you know, or looking at age-appropriate design. But I think what we are missing today at the global level is a conversation where some of these solutions get socialized more broadly and then examined in different contexts, so that we can extract what really works and what needs to be mainstream. Because between this kind of a high level legal obligation and what is being experimented on the ground, we are missing a middle. I think the problem is serious. 1/3 of the data being generated is coming from children, young people, and some of the existing regulation, you know, for example, in Europe, is missing the role of influencers. You know, Secretary Clinton spoke about, you know, the manosphere. There's this documentary inside the manosphere. So these influencers are kind of undercutting this. So we need to have those live conversations, so that we don't we've outsourced so many things to digital platforms. You know, now we are outsourcing childhood development, growing up, to these algorithms. I think this is, I mean, it's like, you know, you're outsourcing democracy, you're outsourcing childhood to this, then what's really left? I think there has to be a wake-up call on this, and this missing middle has to be. I think I may not get another shot at this, but I just want to add one thought to our conversation, which is the importance of plurality. Because you could end up with concentration of power and influence in any kind of a situation. So having more open source approaches, more investments in public interest technology, like the internet was supposed to be that, you know, more distributed. So rather than fixing the post-distribution problems, why don't we try and do the pre-distribution? You know, so like, you know, instead of thinking about universal basic income later, why don't we have a more pluralistic development of the digital economy, including the media spaces?
Yeah, well, that is exactly where I'm going next. I just want to, because I've been up since 3, and my brain sometimes turns to AI slop or slop. I just want to try to get these details correct. But last month, I'm sure you guys have all heard this. There were 2 companies that were found negligent by a jury, Meta and YouTube. And the jury found that they harmed a young user, that the design features that were used, in other words, the algorithms, were addictive, and that it had harmed her mental health. And separately, that same week, we saw a jury in New Mexico, after the state sued under their laws, saying that basically Meta did not protect children because there were sexual advances, and children simply weren't protected from predators. And these are 2 juries within the same week who made these statements and then made these decisions, which could be huge depending on what goes forward. Usually that leads to other people suing. But Congress has done nothing when it comes to trying to regulate in some way social media. The media companies themselves, the tech companies themselves have said we're going to appeal these things, and look, we have done things, and they have done some things. But what have they done, A? And B, is it technology that is the best possible technology to protect children ever that they're using right now?
No. But I want to get to why. And I think here, we've all been talking about this. You have a clear academic case of atrocious market failure. I get your desire to tell people just go offline. I get that. Less, a little bit less. Touch some grass. But we do deserve an online and tech environment that centers and serves the public interest. And the good news is that this is actually the broader story of how we have built technology. If you take 3 steps back, and you were talking about this, right? The TCP/IP protocols that found the internet were developed in an open and decentralized way. This is how the web was born. In 1993, CERN donates the web to humanity. For a long time, we have thought about our technological environment as a global shared commons. Social media is a blip in that timeline of hyper-concentration and opaqueness. Unfortunately, our generation of child safety technology come from that blip in the timeline. That is why we have so few child safety tech. That is why there's such opacity on how they work. We have studied every single platform who declares that they're using technology to scan for child sexual abuse material. So extraordinarily important. They only declare 2 systems, 1 of 2 systems, on which so little is known. That creates the condition for market failure that doesn't push innovation forward, doesn't give those systems to people who build alternative platforms to give us better online ecosystems, and frankly, the failure of pluralism. Because what you get with open innovation, what you get with open source is the right to study these technology, understand. Everybody gets to understand how they work, right? Imagine you're a parent, you go to a grocery shopping and you're trying to get something healthy for your kid, but no food has nutritious label, right? How would you do that, right? Like, so the right to study, the right to modify, that means the right to take a technology and adapt it for your context, your community, your language, your culture. And then the right to use, right? Open innovation, that means new people can come and create the next platform, the next newsroom that are going to use maybe the Matrix protocol like Rappler is using. So there is hope. We can reclaim those principles of openness, of decentralized innovation, and recenter the public interest in the way we build our technological future.
I have to follow up. Is that going to be from the tech companies who have said at one point, yes, we need regulation, or is it going to, and things are still insane, or is it going to come from Congress, or is it going to come from users? Who's going to make that happen?
I think everybody is going to contribute their small piece to that puzzle. On our end, for instance, at Roost, we work on the online safety tech. Some of this will come from big tech because they do have some good systems. So now when they're walking around saying we have an amazingly strong and powerful system to protect people online, we say, great, put it in open source. one-way door. Give it to humanity. This is how we've built innovation. Let's everybody study, modify, and use it, right? So everybody, I think, is going to take their small piece of it. There's not going to be a silver bullet. It's going to have to be a whole of society approach.
I'm going to end with you, Emily. And the idea here is we were all taught that having more information was going to save humanity. And now we have more information than we have ever been able to access before at the tip of our fingers since the dawn of humanity. Are we okay?
What went wrong?
That was, I mean, what went wrong, but also what went right?
We have a lot more, well, okay, yes, so we can't afford the luxury of despair. And you're right, there is certainly more information, and there's also a lot of not information that we're having put in front of us. And actually just like, but what we don't know, we know less perhaps than we ever have done about who paid for it, why am I seeing it, who put it here. That would be a great start if we actually got to that point. That's the job of the journalists.
Who paid for it? Why am I here? What was the last?
Why am I seeing it?
Oh, who paid for it? Why am I seeing it?
Who put it there?
Who put it there? I'm going to write that down because that's a great tool for all of us. We talk about children being addicted to these platforms. I'm going to be fully honest. I'm addicted. I'm addicted to my email. I'm addicted to the social media. I'm addicted. I'm constantly going online, reading different things.
I'll be challenging you on crossplay in a minute, actually. Just as that.
I do play the games too, but those three things making it very simple to lay out for people how we need to start thinking analytically.
Yes. And it's the job of journalists, and we need to be technologically competent, we need to be culturally competent, we need to be politically competent, and we need the environment from our policymakers and our executive to actually allow that to happen. Because I think we have, I mean, I know from my students, they are super talented and very engaged in the issue. This is their world. Now, this is your problem, guys. Now, not just no longer ours. But I can see them figuring this out in ways that would not have been possible. And to Camille's point, we have to build this ourselves. We cannot have it given to us, and that's not just in America. That's in the rest of the world. We have to build it ourselves in our own communities.
The last word from Maria is
demand it, right? This shouldn't be happening right now. It is market failure.
People should not be harmed. All right, we're going to end this. This is incredible. You all brought absolutely wonderful information. But we're going to end it with Jelani Cobb, who is the Dean of the Columbia School of Journalism.
Can we have another round of applause for our panelists and our hosts? So I want to say, personally, to say thank you to Professors Bell and Francois, to Undersecretary Gill, to Secretary Clinton, to Professor Ressa, and to Sarah Sidner for this important, crucial discussion. Anyone who's connected to the journalism school has heard me tell this story previously, so bear with me. In any relationship, if you're around long enough, you have to hear them repeat their stories over and over. But before this school was founded, the journalism school, in fact, 8 years, it was founded in 1912. 8 years before that, Joseph Pulitzer wrote a long essay explaining why the world needed such a bizarre institution as a journalism school. And the argument, because there weren't any at the time, the argument that he made was that the world had grown so complicated and that the task of reporting was so complex and fraught that you needed to build institutions that could help prepare journalists for the work that they would have to do in deciphering this incredibly convoluted and complex environment for their readers and for the public. That was 122 years ago. And I bring that up now to say that while these are very daunting problems, journalism has always been concerned, at least in the modern era, with keeping up with a rapidly evolving set of complexities, and that we have found some way across time to continue to do the work that's so essential for the maintenance and protection and durability of democracy. And the second thing that I'll say in conclusion is that this is exactly what these institutions are here for. Dean Yarhi Milo and myself are always thinking about ways that we can collaborate. We're always having conversations about things that the journalism school and SIPA can do together. And this is exactly what a university is for. I know there's a lot of social, just as we're talking about all of the things where people are saying, have you ever been personally attacked, or personally insulted? We could add to that professionally. And so our professions and our institutions have been derided, and what are they for? They're for this. On one level, the university is here to simply render the world in more legible terms. And conversations like this do that. And so I want to say thank you again to all of our panelists and discussants, and to our moderator. I want to say thank you to all of you who joined us in person. Also, thank you to all of you who joined us on live stream. And if you are interested, keep following what we do at SIPA, keep following what we do at Columbia Journalism School, and you will get more of the same. Thank you.